welcoming you to a life of awareness. The Presence Project is excited for you to join us for today's podcast with your host, Paul Kersner.
Hello and welcome to episode 15 of Are You Being Present? My name is Paul Kersner. I want to welcome you to the present moment. I want to welcome you to the here and now, and I want to thank you for joining us. The topic for today's podcast is breathing into presence. It is my honor and privilege to introduce today's guest, Eric Rehnke. Eric is a breathwork facilitator and quite a special human being. Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Paul.
I invited you on the podcast today because I wanted to explore breathwork. When I start working with patients, I introduce breathing as one of the quintessential presence tools. Breathing and breathwork is something that anyone could do at any point, at any time, anywhere. It has the ability to shift us into the present moment. It has the ability to shift us away from past thought and future worry into the here and now. It is so simple, it is almost so obvious, yet it is something that we just forget from time to time. We take for granted. So my intention for this podcast is for you to introduce breathwork, to talk about breathing, for us to discuss it in a way that makes sense to the general public so that we can raise awareness that maybe we just aren't breathing enough. Eric, I'd love for you to just take a few moments to talk about your introduction to breathing, to the breathing movement, how you got started, and where things have been headed.
Thank you, Paul. It was about 2014, and I was attending a friend of mine's breathing workshop in California at a park. I was outside. It was a beautiful park. And she was coaching us and facilitating us, teaching us, showing us how to breathe. And in about 10 minutes into the session, I started getting these body tremors and tingles and energized feelings in my hands and my feet. And I couldn't, it was amazing. It was like, I felt so powerful. And at that point, I realized this is like, what is this doing to me? It's beautiful. I want more of it. So that's what got me really connected to finding out more about breathing. And I went on from there.
So at that point, you were introduced to this new sensation. And I imagine that it was quite profound for you. What did you do from that point on? How did you get from that point where you had that transformational experience to this point where you are a breathwork facilitator teaching so many people in the Valley about breathing?
Well, that experience led me to find out where I can get more of this. So I started finding the local facilitators in the area, and I found one that was pretty close. I started attending his weekly event in Del Mar, California. And also I started going to these weekend workshops and around California, and I started finding everything I could on breathing, and I just jumped with both feet into that whole arena. I started reading more. I started listening to podcasts. I got really excited about it because it's so simple. It's like we have two kinds of nervous systems in our body. And the backup nervous system, or the one that lets us breathe no matter if we're sleeping or awake, that's our backup system in my mind. And it's an unconscious breath. To be conscious about breathing is to go to our full on operating system, which allows us to really feel our breath and feel our bodies.
You know, it's been my experience personally that as I go throughout my day, I catch myself under breathing, shallow breathing. And I've seen with my own breath as well as my patients that it's quite common. I've heard statistics, I think something like we use 30% of our breathing capacity. Is that the case?
That's what I've heard, and from also watching people and feeling, and myself, to experiencing my own breathing, that sometimes I'm saying, wow, look, I'm hardly breathing here. So, and I've read 30%. Most people are only using 30% of their breathing capacity, and that's why our bodies are not up to perfectly good health, and our consciousness is kind of all over the place.
So that's where conscious breathing comes in, correct?
I believe, yes, conscious breathing moves us into our, which I believe is our full-on, a general system, or the system that we use, the system that we're intended to be using most of the time. Instead, we go to our backup system, which is unconscious breathing. So conscious breathing is, I believe, the way we're supposed to be all the time. And we can get closer to that by practicing breath work.
So it's almost like you have to set an intention so that you can consciously breathe. Otherwise, you're just using that backup system, which we take for granted.
Yes, that's true.
Breathing, is something that, we all do, we all have to do. But I don't think we spend the time and understand how important it is to consciously breathe. I mean, yes, when we meditate, we do breathe in and breathe out. But are we, I know, and I say we, I mean everyone, are we so aware in our general lives, how important, how quintessential it is to be consciously breathing? Because if we're only getting 30%, if we're only using 30%, then what about that 70% that we're not getting? What about that lack of oxygen that our body needs? And, this is an important point, and the question is, a follow-up question for this point is, well, what do we do? What are we supposed to do with that information? How do we consciously breathe? And maybe that's a question you can answer.
We consciously breathe by just knowing that that's something we want to do. So set our intention to breathe, and just following our breath, being aware of our breath is the simplest and the first step to moving into a place where we're actually oxygenating our body in an adequate amount.
So once we're aware of our breath, what's the next step?
Our next step is to consciously breathe and connect it together at the top. So removing the pauses between the inhale and the exhales, and that allows us to connect to our presence, which is a part of all of us. It allows us to be present more and more and more, the more we connect our breathing and the more we are aware of our breathing.
So what does your breathing exercises look like? What is your breathing process, your daily process?
I do in the morning, I usually do my breathing. I'll start out with, I'll play some music. I'll start out nose breathing, and then I'll go into mouth breathing. And I'll move my body, I'll make noises, stuff comes up for me while I'm breathing. I have to write stuff down. Sometimes I get inspirations on things to do or design ideas or whatever, but I get inspirations while I'm breathing. And I like to spend at least like an hour in the morning doing this continual conscious connected breath.
But for people who don't necessarily have that much time, it's important to note that you can spend 5 minutes breathing, and that's better than 0 minutes.
Exactly.
And so if you really are interested in starting, your own breathing exercises, your own breathing program, your breath work, don't get so hung up on the duration. It's about the quality. I think that's an important point to kind of to reinforce.
That's a great point.
I had the opportunity a couple months back to attend one of your breath workshops. And what I found to be really awe-inspiring was the emotional releases that were taking place left and right all over the room, with people crying, moaning, laughing, giggling. I personally didn't have any of those experiences, but I think the reason I was there was to bear witness to it, to see the true power of the breath. I definitely had some physical experiences. I felt different things in different parts of my body. But, I guess a good question for you is to say, well, how is that possible? And what is happening when people are having those experiences?
What happens when we consciously breathe, and I mean consciously breathe in a connected way, is that it builds a bridge to our unconscious, which is usually something we don't have any access to. But when we do that conscious connected breathing and through our mouth, which gives us more of that, the bridge is bigger and more powerful, it allows our inner shaman, our inner guidance, our inner higher self, however you may call it, to bring things up for us to heal, because we want to heal. Our inner awareness or our presence, it wants to heal all the stuff that's carrying around, this baggage that we no longer need. So when we start breathing, it allows that to come up for us to emote and connect to those emotions, those traumatic events that we may have had, or the stories that we had, or the physical injuries that we had, to bring them up to our awareness. And that's what you were experiencing.
So there's true therapeutic value in breath work. So it would be really a powerful experience for those people who are working on themselves, whether they're in therapy or not, to really consider starting a breathing practice so that they can get deeper and they can work on releasing some of that trauma, some of those emotions, some of that baggage, and so that they could be more present while they're doing it. I think it would be a powerful experience for our audience as well as for myself to experience right now one of your breathing exercises, and I was wondering if that would be possible.
Yeah, I'd like to demonstrate and give a little short exercise that we can all do. And it involves breathing in and out through your nose, first of all. And that's the safest. And I say safest because it doesn't elicit a lot of emotions, but it allows us to connect with presence. So nose breathing in a conscious, connected way will allow us to connect to presence, which is, I think, what the point of us being here talking is all about, being present. So the exercise I'm going to demonstrate will be breathing in through your nose and out through your nose with a emphasis on the inhale and a relaxed exhale. We'll be doing a mantra during the breathing to kind of focus our mind attention and give us less opportunities for thoughts to come intruding in our process. So it's going to be in and out through your nose. So relax, exhale. Duration's about the same, the inhale and the exhale. And there's a mantra that goes with it, and it's I am here now in this. And in one word it goes to each operation. So when you inhale the first time, you say I. When you exhale, am. Here, inhaling. Now, exhale. Inhale, in. This, exhale. So the complete mantra, I am here now in this. Each one of those words corresponds to either the inhale or the exhale.
It's a powerful little experience that you have there. That's great.
And like 5 to 15 minutes a day. In fact, the other day I use a mala beads when I do prayer in the morning, and I went through a mala sequence, the 108 beads, and it was about 15 minutes. So if you breathe in and out and then go through this mantra, every time you do the mantra, you go one bead, it's about 15 minutes. So, but you can do that for 5 minutes. However, anything's better than nothing.
And what's that mantra again?
I am here now in this. So the mantra itself connects us to here now in this. And again, it's each word connects to like breathing in, or your inhale, your exhale. So I am here. In inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale.
Very good. I mean, that seems really simple to use and can be done at any time during the day.
Anytime.
You know, you talked a little bit about nose breathing, and I know that there's a difference between nose breathing and mouth breathing when it comes to breath work.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you can describe or explain the difference between the two.
Yes. Nose breathing alone is beautiful for connecting to presence. If we want to do a lot, and it'll bring up things from your past, but it's much gentler than breathing through your mouth. Breathing through your mouth is more like the heavy duty approach to getting all that stuff that's in there and letting it come up. And in my workshops, we do mouth breathing essentially to allow all those things that you experienced to people, that to bring those old emotions or old physical things up. So the mouth breathing is more powerful, but the nose breathing still is very effective as long as it's connected.
So you would suggest when people are starting their practice to start with the nose breathing and then move to the mouth breathing?
Yes. In fact, that's what I do every morning. I start nose breathing, and then I feel led to go to my mouth breathing, and then I start doing that. So that's a really good segue into mouth breathing.
So if people are interested in attending a breath workshop, what would they expect? What is a class like?
My breath workshop?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
Mine. It's about an hour and a half in length, and what we do is I'll go through a little introduction to breathing in general, showing people what they can expect and how to respond if things come up for them, so they're not taken unawares into this process, into this journey, if you will. And I start out playing like 5 minutes of kind of dance, moving music, so we can get our bodies loosened up, and helps our lymph nodes to release and get us ready for breathing. And then we'll lay down, I'll play some music, and then I'll coach them into the mouth breathing, conscious connected breathing. And I'll go around and make sure everybody's safe, and continue to hold space for them throughout the process. It's like 40 minutes of breathing, and then we'll have a 10-minute or so processing time at the end where they can just be in silence in their own thoughts, laying on their side maybe, and having it all kind of integrate for them, because it's all about integration.
It's important to note that it's breathing, and like anything else, is a subjective experience. So there's nothing to say that you will have an emotional release. There's nothing to say that you won't have an emotional release. I think the one thing that will be guaranteed is that you will learn some great breathing techniques, and while you're doing it, you will be present.
Yes.
I mean, that is the one guarantee, especially if you're doing it right.
Yes.
And so, like I started this podcast off with, and I'm just going to reiterate, is that breath work is a quintessential presence tool. And we have to remember this one, because it really has the ability efficiently to pull us back into the present moment. Who doesn't go throughout their day and struggle at some point? Well, you know what? Maybe you can do a quick breathing exercise, whether that's, nose breathing or mouth breathing, to just pull yourself back. But again, it takes an awareness more than anything. And, that's, I guess, one of the things that I'm trying to bring forward is just a sense of awareness of what we're doing, where we're at, how we are. Because if we can identify those moments where we're not being present, we can use these presence tools like breath work so efficiently and so quickly that we don't have to spend any lengthy duration of time out of the present moment. Now, that's not to say that that'll happen right away. It takes work. Just like breath work, it takes work. But if you're willing to put in the time, if you're willing to get more than 30% of your total lung capacity, your whole total breath capacity, then, it's going to show. It's going to show in your life. It's going to show in your body. It's going to show in your emotions. There's just going to be more consistency, more stability. Eric, if there was one message that you wanted to, share with my audience, if you wanted to share, with the world about breath work, what would it be?
Be aware of your breath.
It's a very powerful statement right there. And it's a very meaningful one at that. Like I was just talking about, awareness is so important, yet, we are unawake. We go through our days, through our lives, almost as zombies to an extent. And breathwork has the ability in a second to pull us out of that unconscious mode, that unconscious state of being. So now is the time. This is the moment. Start your breathing practice now. As soon as you finish this podcast, do a quick breathing exercise. Add a breathing exercise to your mindfulness practice in the morning. Add breathing exercises to your evening before you go to bed practice. If you struggle with insomnia, breathe. Okay? Don't go take an Ambien. Don't go drink. Don't go do whatever. Start breathing. This is medicine. And I think this is a really important part, is that we have to get back to this point where we use tools like breathing as medicine. Okay? And
Exactly.
It's a great analogy. I mean, it really is. But it's so true. So I really hope that everyone listening has taken away some valuable information. And this message of being aware of your breath, that's it. That's it right there. Eric, thank you very much for joining us. I want to take a moment and I want you to share how people can get in touch with you and follow up and find out what you're up to.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I have a website called Breathing into Wholeness, and it's spelled BreathingintoWholeness.com, Breathing into Wholeness. And I'd like to say one real quick thing, if I could, before we... The Defense Department has recently realized how important breathing is for the PTSD victims that come back, because I am a Vietnam veteran myself. And up to now, the Defense Department has never recognized breath work as an important adjunct to help eliminate the 20 people a day, 20 veterans that are taking their own lives because they don't know what to do. So the Defense Department is now saying breath work is important to heal PTSD.
Oh, it's a shame that it's taken this long, but
I know. Here we are.
But here we are, exactly. And if the Defense Department is recognizing it, they can implement it. We can start using it with our vets.
Exactly.
Okay, they can finally get the help they need. It can be used as an adjunct therapy, along with all the other therapies that they so rightfully deserve.
Exactly.
This is where we're coming to.
Exactly.
And it is a great time to be alive, and I think that's
Absolutely.
really what it comes down to. We should be grateful for that. We should be so present in the moment that we recognize that fact, and that we can be thankful for all that we ever had, all that we have, and all that we'll ever have in the future.
Yes, I quite agree.
So Eric, thank you for joining us on this podcast.
Thanks so much, Paul, for doing this. Thanks for your work here.
Of course. I live to serve. I want to thank everyone for listening, and I want to thank everyone for joining us in the present moment.
Thank you for listening to the Are You Being Present podcast, brought to you by the Presence Projects. Remember, you have a choice. Choose to be present.